Another edition of Riding Home here, Dean Legge and Matt DeBary. We're going to run through a series of positions for the Dogs. We talked last week about Jake Fromm. That will have to handle it for the quarterbacks since he will be the primary person there. But at running back, Matt, a lot of guys. 5 scholarship kids, Brian Herring, DeAndre Swift, James Cook, Zamir White, Kenny McIntosh. This is a good group. It could be elite if Zamir does what some people think. But what are the strengths of this group, and then we'll get into the weaknesses.
Well, I think the strength would be, number one, depth. Just like you said, there's a lot of guys who have contributed. One guy who hasn't yet, but has 5-star talent, a guy who could carry a team on his back, some say. And then you have a proven guy in DeAndre Swift, probably 1 or 2 if you want to talk best running backs in the country. He's a game ender. Auburn knows it. Kentucky knows it. He's one of those guys who can break your back at the end of the game. And he's coming into his junior year, so he is a guy who, if given enough opportunities, can push for that Heisman talk. He can catch out of the backfield. So he's a guy who's proven, who can do so much for you. Brian Herring, year number 4, he's a guy who had carries against North Carolina, in that 2016 season. He's been around a long time. A guy who can wear on defenses at the end. He can bust through tackles, and he's a hard guy to bring down. So he's a guy you'd love to have as a number 2, number 3 guy. Right now, looks like he's the number 2. James Cook is a guy who you can flex and put him in the slot. So there's just a lot of guys with versatility and guys who have made plays, either last year or the last 2 years, or in Brian Herring's case, last 3 years. And then you've got Zamir White and a freshman running back coming in who are both question marks right now, but guys who can help the team probably either this season or down the road. So there's a lot to like about this group. There's not a 1-2 combo like Todd Gurley, Keith Marshall, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, but there's the opportunity for that is still there. And whether it is a senior in Brian Herring or, Zamir White has this big sophomore season, the opportunity for that is still there. But right now it's DeAndre Swift leading the way, and after that there's quality depth.
Yeah, they don't have the 1-2 quite yet, but they certainly could have a 1-2-3. I mean, if Brian Herring becomes your number 3, that's a pretty lethal backfield. I mean, and that would be Zamir being the 2.
Which I think is what people would love. I mean, I think Kirby Smart would love that. The fans would love that, and that means this running game is going to be hard to stop, especially with behind these offensive linemen. 100% Zamir White is going to be tough to ask for, but even if you get 75% of Zamir White, I mean, he's still, making guys miss and bringing an impact to the offense.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the Zamir that I saw is better than DeAndre Swift, but that was coming on 2 years ago, and that was 2 ACLs ago. So, I learned some. I don't know when I learned for good. I don't know that I've ever learned for good to sort of tamping down expectations. But he's the best kid I've seen play a high school football game. That's just all there is to it. That doesn't mean that he's going to explode and be a freak at Georgia. But I wouldn't be surprised if he is their best running back by the end of the season. With that said, all these guys got to stay healthy. And, DeAndre has dealt with an injury in the past. Obviously, very good reporting from Dylan Weber about that. We talked about that on here not so long ago. And if you're DeAndre and you stay healthy, it is kind of hard to imagine that someone on this roster would be a better running back than him. But that is, look, Zamir is really good. In addition to that, you have Herring, who has the ability to, he just runs so hard, Matt. I think that's what it is about Brian Herring. He's not prototypical necessarily. And damn, he runs hard, man. It's crazy. He's an
especially around the goal line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he knows what he's doing. He runs behind his pads, and if you've seen him outside of pads, he's got some muscle on him. He's a big kid, but he's shown some agility as well. He's shown a spin move here and there. So one of the more underrated guys on the team, even though it feels like he's been playing for 5-6 years now. So it's a group that, again, it has to stay healthy.
Yeah.
There's always someone in that running back group who's dinged up or out here and there. But
Yeah, but they're playing SEC football, man. It's just a
that's
brutal
that's why
league.
they're glad you have five of them, and that's what you do. You bring them in each and every year, and that's why it's so important, I think, to get two backs a year or one really good one, just depending on numbers there. But Georgia does have some guys who can run the football, and it's hard to imagine another group in the country better than Georgia's running back group right now.
What? I mean, is the biggest concern injury?
I think so. I mean, DeAndre Swift is obviously proven one of the best in the country. I think Brian Herrien has proven that he can make an impact. I mean, he probably has more touchdowns. If we were to guess how many career touchdowns Brian Herrien has, I feel like it would be more. I mean, he's a proven guy. And then you have a five-star question mark, James Cook, who can make plays. We saw that, and he's a guy who could maybe step into a return mode, kick return, punt return guy. So I don't think we've seen the most of James Cook. We're going to see a lot more of him this year. So a lot of guys who can make plays.
Yeah, they do have quite a few guys that can make plays. Brian Herrien has 7 total career touchdowns running and then another one receiving. So, 8 touchdowns in 3 years, maybe not what you would think from him. His biggest year thus far in terms of touches and yards was in 2016. But then that season, let's not forget that you had some banged up running backs then too, I feel like. I mean, Nick was coming back from his knee situation. When everyone was totally healthy, he only had 265 yards. Last year he wound up with 295. So I don't know, man. I like Brian Herrien a lot. I think he's been a heck of a player for Georgia, and it just if he's your backup guy, that might not be the end of the world. If he's your number 3, though, that's not like having Elijah Holyfield as your 3, but it's not bad.
Because the number 2 guy would be Zamir. I don't think James Cook is really. I mean, he's a weapon. He's not a true, running back who I think would overtake Brian Herrien on the depth chart. If Brian Herrien's your number 3 guy at the end of the year, you're looking at carries and yards. It's because Zamir White has turned into the player that a lot of people thought he could be, and that's really good news for Georgia because then you could have again a top 1-2 combination in the country.
So, what really should we be expecting from this group? I mean, a season ago, Matt, they wound up. I mean, they Jake Fromm is going to have a lot to say about this offense. What percent should we expect from offensively in terms of production? What should we expect from this offense, from this run game? Just to the listeners can know. Georgia was one of the top teams in the country last year running the ball that had a traditional offense. They had 239 yards rushing. That's more than I keep up with this just because I'm a little bit neurotic. That's more than every team they play coming into this season, with the exception of Georgia Tech from last year. So that would be their Georgia was at 239, Vanderbilt 168, Notre Dame 183. Tennessee 129, Carolina 153, Kentucky 199. The Gators were at 213, a power team. Missouri 202, Auburn 168, LSU 219. Georgia Tech, of course, had 325 yards a game on the ground, and then Alabama with 198. So Georgia, significantly higher than everyone else, with the exception of perhaps the Gators. What should people expect? Should they expect 240 yards again this season? What's changed? You don't have Holyfield.
I think so, but someone's going to get those carries. I think it's still a run-first team, a run-first offense, especially behind this mammoth offensive line. I think Georgia's going to continue to pound it, especially early in games. Make sure you're able to run the ball, get something going on the ground, and then Jake Fromm will tear you up on third down. I don't think they're going to go very far away from that, but DeAndre Swift is a guy who needs the ball in his hands, and when things are clicking, they love to just put someone else in there and keep running the football. So I'm expecting them to continue to be a first-run team. Jake Fromm will get them out of plays here and there. As the junior quarterback, the leader of the team, he's going to put them in the best position each and every play. I mean, at least that's the expectation. So it's really all going to be up to him. But I think, strategically, they're going to keep running the football. They do have these backs, like we talked about. They're going to want to get James Cook some carries on an end around or something like that. These guys are going to have packages. We've seen Brian Herring come out of the backfield and make some plays, scored a touchdown out right up the middle against Texas. So there's a lot you can do with these guys, and maybe not all be on the ground. I mean, we've seen so much out of Swift in the backfield that I think whether they're getting carries or not, it's going to be all about touches. And I think they're going to each get a lot of touches.
Maybe this season comes, in terms of the running backs, perhaps this season does come down to the health of Zamir White and DeAndre Swift. I mean, if those two guys get hurt, you're a very different team. And that goes for anybody. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that.
I'm expecting Jake to get over that 3,000-yard mark passing. I'm not expecting him to throw for 4,000 yards or anything like that. I think they are going to continue to run and pound the football and play good defense, and I think that's what they did a lot last year. And Jake's going to air it out, especially in close games, but I think Georgia's going to try to run the ball early in games to set the tone, and we know they're going to run it when they've got the lead late in games. So I think that's still going to be what this team or this offense, that's what their identity is going to be still, to run and that football, especially if Zamir White is healthy. Then it opens the door for so many things, especially in the run game. But, yeah, I still think it's going to be a run-first team. I think Jake Fromm is still going to throw it more than he did last year, but we'll see. I think it'll be more up-tempo as well with James Coley compared to Jim Chaney last year. But overall, I think they're going to pound the rock like they have in the past few years.
All right, Georgia's run game, quick review there, but it is probably going to be the most important part of the team, certainly on offense, and they'll have to combine with the offensive line, who we will talk about here sometime soon. Go to dogpost.com, dawgpost.com. Stay tuned to Dogpost for everything, including Media Days next week, Matt, which you are avoiding magically and intelligently, by the way. So go over to Dogpost, and we will see you there.